All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. So, quick introductions. My name is Solis at Fractal Gardens. I'm here with Dakota, or N-Alysick. So, we are both here to discuss our origin stories, but I'm going to hand it over to Dakota so he can give his introduction.
Sure. So, my name's Dakota. Dakota Foss Branscombe, and my channel name right now is called N-Alysick. I might change that. But the purpose of my channel is to discuss all things music, magic, meditation, and mysticism. I plan on teaching what I have begun to develop, which is essentially a spiritual philosophy of combining music and magic, and to be able to help people manifest the life of their true will, of their true desire, and to help benefit the whole of humanity and all of the planet as much as we can together. So my background, I have been practicing magic for about 5 years now, since the end of 2019, start of 2020. Prior to that, I was briefly raised Christian as a kid, but never really believed it much myself, and kind of took atheism pretty early on in my teenage years through middle and high school. And my belief developed over time, slowly, as I became less closed-minded and cynical and judgmental and more open, as my preconceived notions about people who I didn't understand were switched when I met those people. There was a huge part of my background where I felt as though people who were spiritual for a long time were simply ignorant or believing nonsense. And that was changed as I met, and I was blessed by life to meet a lot of beautifully intelligent people from very spiritual backgrounds all throughout my life at many, many points in time, which, you know, proved me wrong, that it wasn't that these people were just stupid, because they were very clearly intelligent. And so that made me have to question myself and come to realize that maybe there are different versions of reality. Maybe there are different beliefs about the world, and some people's beliefs may or may not be influenced less by scientific evidence, but those beliefs help them not only get to sleep at night, but become better people. And, you know, who am I to judge based off of that, right? But after that, synchronicities began to happen in my life. Things began to happen that were extremely weird. And honestly, they'd always happened, but I just never noticed them and was never, you know, I called them coincidences. But they started to jump out at me, and happen in very interesting ways that I couldn't deny as simply random anymore. There's an interesting story with my family about a bottle of sauce that my stepmother wanted for a long time and that we could never find for quite a few years. And my dad's a truck driver, so he would search all across the country and he couldn't find it. And we had this conversation one night in the middle of nowhere when I was working with him on the road. And the conversation was essentially being grateful for the people that we love. And a lot of it was being grateful for my stepmom specifically and for the things that she's done for both of us. And it was right after that conversation and after that dinner, we decided to pop into some grocery store to look for the sauce. And there was not only the sauce there, but the exact amount of sauce that corresponded to the years of their relationship, how long they had been together. And their anniversary was just around the corner. It was like right there. And so, you know, things like that began to happen to me that forced me to realize that not everything was just random, which is what the atheistic minded belief had me believing, that all of this was just a complete random, chaotic nonsense fest and where everything was completely meaningless. But meaningful things happening in my life forced me to change that belief. And then also altered states of consciousness, experiencing things like meditation or psychedelics or whatever that caused me to experience what I perceived of as other layers of reality and made me realize that maybe there was just more to this. And that kind of started me on a journey of researching this stuff until I came across the Midnight Gospel show on Netflix in 2020, after I had moved out on my own for the first time. And through that show and a few episodes, specifically the episodes with Damien Eccles and Jason Louv, I began to realize that even in the modern world, there are people who actually take magic seriously. And I'd kind of known it before. I'd met people who were like Wiccans and stuff, but like I really had just never seriously considered it. You know, I'd always been into fictional magic in a sense as a kid. I always loved picking mage classes and games and so on and so forth. And, you know, I had the narrative interest in magic, but I never considered that it could be real. I never thought even to think that there were people in the real world who thought that it was real. And so when I heard that, you know, that made my logical and emotional mind triggered, honestly, and interested at the same time, because it made me realize I was like, okay, already beginning to become open-minded to religion and spirituality in certain senses. But I started to realize, I was like, if this is true, if there really is such a thing as actually being able to, you know, do ritual magic in some way, shape, or form and affect reality, and like these people aren't just crazy, then like obviously that is something that not only I should know, but everybody should know, right? Like, isn't that kind of a big deal? But like obviously also I had to know if these people were just crazy. Like there was a part of it which was like, wow, there's people really in the modern world that believe this and practice this like it's real. What is going on here? You know, so I just became fascinated. And what fascinated me even more was that when I really began to research it, I'd heard something completely different than what I'd ever heard from religion or spirituality before. Because religion and spirituality oftentimes have dogmatic ways of just simply telling you to believe things and have faith without questioning things. Whereas the people who were teaching magic were saying, even if you don't believe it, just try it. And once you try it out, even if it doesn't work the first time, just keep trying it out and eventually something will happen, even if you don't believe it. And that, you know, that was obviously, if nothing else, a challenge. I mean, that I didn't necessarily believe it, but if the only way to prove it wrong was to practice it, then I had to figure out enough about it to be able to try it. And so I began to try it, and things in my life started happening. You know, manifestations, synchronicities, weird spirit encounters, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it really opened up a whole rabbit hole in my life. And ever since then, I've begun to now integrate it back into my life in such a way where my primary focus is to be able to help people figure out what it is that they really want to do inside, and to do it in a way that allows them to succeed in that, and to succeed in being able to help themselves and help others with it. Because my core spiritual philosophy is that once you figure out what you really want to do, whatever it is that you really want to do inside, whatever your soul truly desires, is what the universe wants you to do. Those things are the same. And that once you figure that out and you begin to take actionable steps towards that, and behave as if you are that person, then the universe itself begins to support you in that. And you actually, so long as it is not selfishly directed, solely selfishly directed, you do deserve to grow and benefit from this, but you also need to direct it outwards in a way that benefits the whole of humanity, because that's how the whole of humanity begins to benefit back and help you. this, it begins a reciprocal chain where you become a node in the network. And that is largely what I think the age of Aquarius means. Aquarius, I think, largely represents networking and coming together as your individual node in the network, and finding more people who are interested in and know about the same things that you do, but maybe from different angles. That way you can both benefit and teach each other and grow together and create something greater as a whole. And so, that was kind of a lot, but I'm also passionate about music. Music has been a thing that I've been interested in my entire life. I've been a musician my entire life. Me and my best friend from Portland, his name is Anthony. We make music together under the duo name 5656, or the word 50, the number 6. You can find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, all the things. And we make electronic music like dubstep, drum and bass, house, that type of thing. But we also make meditation music and enlightenment-based dance music to, essentially infuse higher consciousness information into the music so that people can dance, headbang, have a great time, and also maybe learn something that will benefit them and, put them on the path to figuring out what they really want to do, and to helping the world and coming together as one. And so I do this in a lot of angles in my life. I also run lights for my DJ friend here in town named Quay Collective. We play electronic music as well, but we also try to bring people together and create a scene where people can be safe to express themselves in whatever way they see fit, which is really kind of what dance and rave culture has rubbed off on us in a lot of ways, is just the peace, love, unity, and respect vibes, plur vibes of the rave culture, which I think really is kind of a modern manifestation of that same current of energy from the hippie movement of the 60s, in a different music sense, but same energy. The every angle of my life now at this point, I really am trying to figure out ways to help the world wherever I can. And I now recognize that requires helping myself too. So I'm planning on making content like coaching courses that I will be able to help people with personally through monthly, as well as making free content online on YouTube, and in order to help people learn ways to explore what it is that they really want to do in life and figure that out, what their purpose might be, and to do it in a way that actually allows them to not only benefit themselves, but also benefit the world off of that. So that is where my current practice is at. The YouTube channel N-Alysick is where I'm currently filming up and uploading content like guided meditations and guided magic rituals, teaching people how to do a lot of the stuff that I've been practicing for the past 5 years, off and on. And I don't claim to be an expert at this stuff yet. I'm a student on this path. I kind of am kicking around some word in my head like Eternal Apprentice as just a title that I'm going to take on for the rest of my life, because I really do never want to get to the point where I feel like I just know it all. I don't. I'm a student on this path, but I also feel like I'm a node in a network, and so I'm here to do my purpose, which is to spread this stuff. That's what I feel, and I feel if I do this in the right way, then I will also create a community where other people who are doing this can spread what they know to others. It will be that coming together of the Aquarian network. And so I will learn as well by doing this. And I will teach others who will be able to teach others. This will magnify. So I claim no expertise. I'm not part of any official order or fraternity or organization. I haven't been initiated into anything. I don't have any certificates for any type of healing practices or anything. I've just been reading books and practicing on my own, with my self-initiation practices. But I will spread what I know in my own personal practice. I don't even necessarily claim to ascribe to one belief system. My current belief system would be what I call perennial syncretic omnism, which is a really heady and god-awful title, but what it basically means is that I think that all of the religions have truth in them, and that they are all essentially expressing from one core source, and that also involves the combination of the magical and religious and mythological systems and spiritual systems of various different systems, and in my practice, as many as I can, to be honest. So I don't claim expertise in any one system. I claim, if any, wisdom. I claim the ability to read between the lines and connect the dots between a lot of systems and integrate things together, and kind of break rules as opposed to follow them. So that is my path right now, and that is what I offer. Is I teach that once you figure out what you really want to do, that the universe is going to help you, so long as you do it in a way that helps the universe. And I want to give people the tools, magic, spirituality, to be able to do that. And music, magic, meditation are all just different faces of that for me. So that's my current journey. And if you have more questions, I'll definitely answer. But I would also love to hear a little bit about how you got into this, and what kind of drew you to this path of spirituality. And after that, we can kind of get into how we met, and how that kind of brought us together.
I just want to touch on something real quick. If anybody here has not seen the show, The Midnight Gospel, definitely go check that out. That show is a very psychedelic yet grounding experience at the same time, which sounds oxymoronic. It'll blow your mind. You know, it's basically just a podcast series that's animated, and it's very interesting to say the least. I believe Duncan Trussell, Jason Louv, actually Damon Eccles is in there as well. Duncan Trussell, Jason Louv, Damon Eccles. There's a lot more than just those three, but those are the three main ones that really stuck out for me. But basically, some of the more well-known modern occult practitioners, maybe not so much Duncan Trussell, but Jason Louv and Damon Eccles for sure. So I am Solis. I run the YouTube channel Fractal Gardens. I have just created this channel. There's really not a whole lot of content on there, but I am planning to create content that is very educative. More so just going to be delving into my personal spiritual practice and how others that might also resonate with that may glean and learn from what I have learned. A little background on myself. I was raised Christian. Very traditional. My father specifically was a biblical literalist. My mother, not so much. She was a little more just open-ended with everything. But my father, he brought us to church every week. You know, we would go out to Bible studies and such. So it was pounded in my head pretty hard. And I have always been somebody who has been very deeply spiritually inclined. So Christianity being the only thing that I really knew about growing up, I attached to it. I was pretty devout for a while. However, once I hit my teenage years, about 14 or 15, I remember running across a video talking about sigils and sigil magic, and it just sparked this twinkle in my eye. And I started doing more research into, you know, all of the more taboo subjects when it comes to spirituality, or at least in my mind, what was considered taboo. Started messing around with sigils. That's pretty much as far as I took it. I only let myself get into it for, I want to say, like 3 to 6 months before I had an experience that scared the pants off of me, and I just burned it all down and went back to the books, the Bible books. But there's always just been this deep fascination that I could not curb, and I went through a series of pretty traumatic events in my life that really put a bad taste in my mouth when it came to the church and just organized religion in general. And it was at that point that I finally kind of gained the courage to start delving into ceremonial magic specifically. I've always been a very expressive being. I've always been very my imagination, I've always had a very active imagination. As a kid, I would be in the backyard playing with my little toy sword for hours on end, just imagining every scenario under the sun. So it only makes sense that ceremonial magic really resonated with me. Given the fact, of course, that within ceremonial magic, you are called on to exercise your imagination in tandem with generating an emotional experience at will. So I started to do a little bit of research and studying the origins of the Golden Dawn, and just kind of picked up on their system because they had everything laid out in a curriculum that was pretty easy to follow. Started learning about, planetary magic, as well as general correspondences, specifically in relation to the mystical tradition of Kabbala, and incorporating ceremonial magic, sigil work, planetary magic, all these things together to, at first, try to manifest things into my life. I was still pretty immature at the time. I was just getting into everything. I didn't really have a good foundation or understanding of the principles behind this world. So obviously, it's like a kid in a candy shop. I start manifesting for money. It's the first thing. And when I started performing these rituals, at first it was the intense energetic response that I would get after performing a ritual such as the Lesser Banishing or invoking of the pentagram that kept me going, because there was an immediate response within my body. I could physically feel a change occurring. It felt light. It felt as though I were more at peace. And then slowly things in my life started to shift around, and I started to kind of mess around with more sympathetic magic as well as the ceremonial stuff. The ceremonial stuff would work in tandem with the sympathetic to kind of charge the experience and bring about more potent results as well as quicker results. And of course, as many before me probably have, when you first get into this path, I started trying to manifest for money. And after performing certain rituals and spell work in tandem with one another and experiencing these results, it just sparked this fire inside of me where there was really no going back from. When you begin to experience the results of your magic, it kind of awakens this primal enthusiasm within you that there is a whole universe of experiences right around the corner that is so far removed from anything that we thought was possible, which can scare the living hell out of you or generate motivation within you, just depending on the person and how they were brought up. But things got a little bit more interesting, a little bit more in depth. I ended up practicing ceremonial magic for about 6 months, I want to say, before I decided to finally build up the courage, as somebody who's always been very introverted, to go to a local yoga studio and just meet some people, see what's going on, and see if I can't grow my roots in the community a little bit. And I ended up meeting somebody who turned me on to the whole concept of cold water submersion on top of the Wim Hof style breathing method. So for a short while there, I want to say it was a span of about 2 months after being shown these techniques, I was on a daily basis performing both the Lesser Banishing and invoking rituals of the pentagram, as well as very heavy heart-based self-love meditative practices where I would go into trance and just kind of perform shadow work and question myself over and over again, trying to get to the root cause of certain traumas that I could physically feel inside of my body, and learning to love myself again, as well as forgive myself. So it was the actual ritual practice on top of the shadow work and the heart-based meditative practices, on top of what I would call the yogic practice of the fixed gaze, or tratak, where you would just light a candle and then you would stare at that flame in a state of no mind. So again, there were the ritual practices, there was the tratak, the shadow work and self-love meditations, on top of the cold water submersion and the Wim Hof breathing, as well as some sun gazing that would occur whenever I could. So all of these practices combined over the course of about a month, maybe 2 months, I would say, ultimately yielded an experience that has stuck with me ever since. This this specific experience happened almost 3 years ago, and there have been many ups and downs in my life where I've had to kind of step away from these practices and give more thought and attention to other aspects. However, it's always been there lingering in the background. I experienced within my body what a lot of people, at least in the Eastern tradition, refer to as the Kundalini awakening. And there was one day where I woke up and I felt this pressure in my head, and it was kind of uncomfortable and unexplainable. So I started doing some of the breath work, the Wim Hof style breathing, and I had this moment of release where it felt as though there was this fluid running from my brain down into my spine, and I just felt completely at peace. It's quite indescribable. It was like a raised state of consciousness, because I mean, when you go into these practices and these meditations and these rituals, you can achieve that state of mind that just brings peace, and you feel nothing but the present moment, and you can physically feel in your body the sensation of this light coming into you that produces this warmth and this lightness in your body. But it's very momentary. You perform the ritual, you perform the meditation, and there it is. You have it for 15, 20 minutes, and then you go about your day. But during this moment of awakening, it was a consistent feeling for about 3 days. And ever since then, I have not been able to look back. It was just such a mind-opening experience. So yeah, fun stuff. But anyway, that is just kind of a brief detail and background of my origin story. With that being said, the goal of my YouTube channel, again, is going to be directed more so toward guiding people on how to love themselves in a world where we are constantly inundated with expectation, where people feel as though they cannot be themselves, where people have forgotten what it means to love themselves and to forgive themselves and to just be. I plan to create... So the goal of my YouTube channel will be to help guide people towards learning how to love themselves again, really. And of course, I have a very big passion for books in general. So I will be doing a lot of book readings, maybe even some custom poems that I'll be reading. It's kind of a threefold project where I'll be just giving general knowledge of what's already been put out there, as well as custom meditations and rituals that people will be able to perform to be able to learn how to reawaken their energy centers and really understand what it means to be human, to be a divine, infinite being. I'm going to hand it over to Dakota for a moment.
Yeah, to that end, a big part of what I do as well is that same focus, which is just, understanding that many people nowadays are simply unhappy with their lives for one reason or another. And I think that many of the problems in the world at a very root level simply would not be problems if people were happy with their lives. I fundamentally feel as though helping people figure out whatever it is that they really want to do is, in a lot of ways, another angle of helping a person figure out how to love their entire life, how to love everything about life, because a person who loves everything about life isn't going to want to murder somebody or tell somebody else to go to war or do any of the crazy, heinous crimes that we don't really have a way to necessarily end otherwise. I honestly feel as though it's really the only thing that could literally solve all problems is just get everybody to a state where they are happy with their lives. And then we could possibly talk about maybe restructuring the world to refocus its gaze so that it rewards people and incentivizes people to figure out what it is that they really want to do, that they love about life, and, pays them to do that type of work. Because if we had that, then I think many people would probably be happier. Now, obviously, there's holes in the theory, sure, but I think at a very base level, you get a happy world, many of the problems of the world simply just go away. And so you teach people how to love themselves, we get a lot closer to that happy world. And the heart space is a very important place for that, in many ways, because the heart physically has been shown to have a measurable electromagnetic field to it. And the electromagnetic field of the heart is many magnitudes stronger than the electromagnetic field of the brain. And this field of the heart, it is directly correspondent in the physical body to what's known as the thymus gland. And the thymus gland, when you meditate, when you do magic, when you pray, which to me personally are just three different ways of saying the same thing. When you do a ritual, you're meditating, you're praying, you're doing all of this all together. To me, that's the same thing. Many people have a semantic distinction between those things. But I think you find in all across the world, what one person's meditation is another person's prayer, is another person's ritual, and vice versa. And some people, it matters very much that you're doing one and not the other. But to me, I think you're kind of all doing the same thing. We are all kind of doing the same thing. But when you feel with the heart the emotions of that which you are attempting to manifest or invoke or whatever, when you feel it in your heart, the emotions in the body literally move around chemicals in order to produce a different physical state of feelings and sensations on the inside. And so like a lot of people talk crap about like the law of attraction because they say, or positive thinking, because they feel like a lot of people, and there are stories of people who spend a lot of time with positive thinking and don't get a lot of results. And that's, I think, because the feeling aspect is important. The heart aspect is important to merge those electromagnetic fields, the mind and the heart. But the heart, it feels with feelings. The neurons in the heart, they think with feelings. And the feelings of the heart only experience the present moment. The body, if you're experiencing a traumatic flash of a memory, or if you're experiencing a meditation and you're visualizing a future, your body, if you're emotionally there, feeling the emotions of that state, can't tell the difference between the past, the present, the future. It just feels it right now. And when you feel the emotions in the heart of, say, being healed, being grateful for your healing, so on and so forth, the thymus gland can actually produce, I'm forgetting exactly what the name of this chemical is right now, but it produces a hormone in the heart that essentially can be converted in through the body into a numerous array of other chemicals that can heal many things, that heals the body of many physical ailments through which we don't even have pharmaceutical healing for those things yet, like if you look into the work of Joe Dispenza and you read like the Becoming Supernatural book, because that's what really kind of opened the way for me in a lot of the meditation studies being scientifically proven to have absolutely mind-blowing effects, that when you feel into the heart with the emotional state of the wish fulfilled, that you produce chemicals in the body that begin to make it look like it's literally tuned into a different reality. You resonate with a different timeline. You quantum leap, and you can have spontaneous healing of things that shouldn't be healable according to most modern science. He has descriptions of people like curing blindness and deafness. He has a lady testifying that she had a thymus gland grow back after it was surgically removed. I mean, stuff that doesn't make any sense. It sounds like tabloids, but like scientific evidence of it. And it to me, I think opens the way to scientifically providing a basis for understanding that there are non-physical planes of existence, and that for thousands of years, the esoteric, spiritual, magical, occult world has had a far deeper understanding of the deeper planes of reality than what many of us have been even led to believe exist. And that to me is one of the craziest things that I ever learned on this path. Essentially figuring out that not only is this stuff real, but that people have known it's real for thousands of years and have kept that information from the majority of the rest of us. But I'm not going to go too far into that.
That's all right. And you know what? I just want to, again, briefly touch on what you had mentioned earlier about people who have this mindset of radical positivity, radical positive thinking. That is a common misconception. I believe I kind of have my own understanding of how this whole thing works, and that is that your mind forms your reality. There's an old Hermetic axiom that states, as above, so below, as within, so without. And the second half of that axiom is the one that really resonates with me because, yes, as within, so without, what you experience within your being ultimately shapes your reality. Your subconscious mind uses symbolism to create and manifest different scenarios within your life. So, radical positivity, while it may seem like the right path, unfortunately, if you really think about it, all you're doing is denying your lower self. You are essentially shutting a part of your mind off and lying to yourself about the true reality and nature of your existence in that moment when you experience suffering. So I think a more healthy, positive, organic way of going about bringing this change of mindset is to understand your suffering and to have a mindset that will help bring about a positive change through that suffering. It's more so a matter of, again, understanding your suffering, understand why you're in the position that you are in, and know. It's all about knowing, not believing necessarily, but knowing within yourself that things are going to change, everything happens for a reason, and gleaming from that experience whatever it is you can in order to grow and learn and gain knowledge as to not go through that experience again. Sometimes circumstances are out of our hands. We can't control what happens to us. However, we can always control how we choose to perceive a situation, not necessarily how we feel about it, which again, yes, it is important to maintain a positive attitude, but at the same time, it's equally as important to maintain an understanding of what brought that situation in the first place and understand your own psychological processes in order to be able to guide your thinking in a way that will bring about positive results. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or another thing that you had mentioned is these non-physical realities that exist around us that the occult world has had an understanding of for millennia, since the dawn of time, really. One thing that has really fascinated me about, ceremonial magic and planetary magic specifically is just the law of correspondences. So there is this concept of correspondences that exists within that non-physical plane of reality, and that is that everything that exists within our 3D reality that corresponds to this greater aspect of what, in my personal belief or in my personal practice, we consider the aspects of God. These are the natures of God. This is how God manifests himself into our reality. And that is not to say that the old man with the white beard in the sky. It's more so the concept of all things converging in one point, that infinite point, that source where all things come, where all things will return to, dividing itself out into smaller points, into lower dimensions, where things become more dense. But through that process of dividing itself, you can kind of map out the characteristics of that being as it descends into the abyss. And that is why another reason I'm so fascinated with the Kabbala and ceremonial magic is because you can kind of map out all of these things in order to build your own custom rituals. And as you go through these processes, it's almost like an initiation where you start to slowly understand the deeper underlying aspects of reality. And these correspondences exist in all things. Everybody here has heard of the chakra system. There's the 7 main chakras of the body, the 7 colors in the ultraviolet spectrum, the 7 days of the week, as I know you had mentioned in one of your videos recently. But basically there's this concept that, and realistically, as complicated as a lot of these concepts may come off as, it's very rudimentary. It really just boils down to willful observation of the basic principles and natures that occur in our reality. A quick example would be listening to metal music versus listening to classical music. Obviously, one of those things is going to invoke a different emotional response in you. And within that process of that response being invoked within you, we define those characteristics or the aspects of God. We use that as a sort of almost neural net within all these concepts to define the natures of our reality. You see this most prevalent, in my opinion, within sympathetic magic, where you have to use certain correspondences within your spell work, certain herbs, certain dressings, certain colors of candle, all to help bring about the manifestation or the end goal of the working. That is because, just like with any other principle in life, such as music or the chakras, each one of these herbs has within its being its own correspondence to these planets, to these spirits, to the underlying nature of our reality. And you can draw that essence out of them by intentionally observing, understanding, and working with these correspondence. And one of the most interesting parts of all of this for me is that once you start to really get into this practice and understanding these concepts, you start to learn and understand that a lot of these correspondences at the root level of what they define, what they represent, kind of hold their own consciousness. There is a base consciousness that lies within that neural net. It can be expounded upon into many different points and fused with other correspondence to bring about a rainbow mosaic of defining characteristics. However, within the root, each one of them carries, again, their own consciousness, and you can mix and match to develop an entire pantheon of different archetypal correspondences represented by deity, such as the goddesses of love. You have the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite, and then you have the Roman goddess of love, Venus. And then, of course, you have the Hindu goddess of love, Lord Shukra. So, all across the world, you have different cultures that kind of create their own archetypal flavor for these correspondences, who all sort of have their root in the same concept. Within the Hebrew mystic tradition, you have what's referred to as the Shem Ha-Mephorosh, which is the 72-fold name of God, which basically at the center of that name holds the Tetragrammaton, or Yud-He Vav-He, and expounded around that circle are the 72 natures of God. For example, the one that everyone is most familiar with is Michael, he who is like God, Raphael, the healing of God. These are natures. These are aspects of God. And within those 72 names, you have ultimately defined every branching path within the Kabbala, every branching path between those names, every combination that can potentially be formed to bring about every aspect of God. And again, we're not talking about winged beings made of light necessarily when we refer to angels. It's more so talking about the concept of one elemental force or one astrological force defined so clearly and so potently that it begins to take on its own defining nature. It exists as a palette within the mosaic. It exists as a defining characteristic as opposed to a link between plethora of spirits. It is the conscious force that is developed over time when enough energy is posited into a singular concept. And of course, once you start actually working with these spirits, things can get very interesting very fast. And obviously you must approach everything with reverence and respect. But I will say that it does eventually get to a point where even as, a skeptic, the synchronicities that pile up in your life become undeniable. And it really just kind of opens up your consciousness and it opens up your mind and helps you understand that there is truly a much deeper aspect to our consciousness and the nature of the reality that we live in than we have ever been taught in any form of education. Anyway, I know you wanted to speak on the process of loving yourself through your suffering and understanding your suffering as opposed to just having a toxic positive mindset. But
Right. Yeah. I think to address kind of my version of that would be to realize that, like, in my own life recently, that negativity cannot be transcended through ignorance, and it cannot be transcended through solely choosing to maintain focus on the ideal reality. What you hear a lot in esoteric occult circles or new age spirituality circles with the positive thinking and so on and so forth, toxic positivity really being this concept of like trying to ignore your suffering and trying to pretend that things are better. And that's not at all what it is. I think a lot of people can get twisted in just trying to sit in their suffering and not experience any change and not try to do anything better for themselves and simply hope that things will get better, which is kind of reminds me of this story of, two men on a boat and it sinks in the middle of the ocean. And the first guy says, I hope another boat will come. And the second guy says, well, God will save us, don't worry. And then the boat comes and the first guy gets on and the second guy doesn't. And the first guy's like, well, aren't you going to get on the boat? And the second guy's like, don't worry, God will save me. And then like another boat comes by, he doesn't get on. God will save me. Another boat comes by, he doesn't get on. God will save me. Eventually he dies, and this is a parable, so I don't necessarily literally believe in heaven, but in the story he goes to heaven and sees God and is like, why didn't you save me? And God's like, why didn't you get on the effing boat? Or like any of the 6 times I sent it to you, And so I think the point to that is that your suffering, your negativity, your anger, your frustration, your shame, your guilt, the lower emotions, the lower vibrational emotions often get trapped in the physical system, which is represented in many senses in these different, correspondent maps of reality as, whether it's the root chakra or whether it's the Malkuth center or the Qliphoth, whatever you want to call it. The experience of trapped low vibrational emotions in the lower parts of your body, where trauma really gets ingrained in the physical body. And for a lot of people who internalize these lower vibrational emotions, they don't allow themselves to feel it. They repress it and suppress it. And they don't allow themselves to feel it when they do feel it. And so the way to transcend that is to bring love and acceptance to those experiences when you experience them. You can't simply ignore them. You can't simply look away from them. You have to look at them and be willing to hug them. You have to be willing to understand yourself at a deep level and forgive yourself and love yourself with all of your flaws, all of your mistakes, all of your sins, which really the word sin just means when it's off target, off mark, I don't mean like the Christian version of sin. I mean, when you miss the mark in your own life. It's an archery term. The expression of your true will in your own life happens through the manifestation of the combining of your light and your darkness, which is expressed in so many different ways in so many different philosophies, whether it's the Taiji of Taoism, the yin yang symbol, or whether it's the alchemical philosopher's stone, or the rosy cross and the Rosicrucians, the eye in the pyramid of the Freemasons. There's so many of these symbols that mean the same thing, which is essentially just this combination of spirit and matter, the uniting of the whole self, which is what it means to be holy, whole. And the whole self is the light and the dark. It's not simply just being light. This is actually in Rudolf Steiner's system articulated as a sense of evil. I don't look at it that way, but in his system, he looks at it as like the Ahrimanic and the Luciferic. The Ahrimanic is like the evil of the dark. The Luciferic is the evil of the light, being so purely light that you never allow yourself to be dark. Being so focused on spirit that you lose focus on matter, which misses the mark entirely. And the mark instead is to figure out how to unite spirit and matter here. That's what the cross represents, is the unity of spirit and matter. And these symbols, these correspondences, the Kundalini awakening, the awakening of the lower snake energy from the lower base of the spine, transcending up the root, to the crown, up the spine, through the 33 vertebrae, 33 years of Jesus's life, 33 ladders of the Jacob's, ladder, 33 paths of the Kabbalistic tree of life, so on and so forth. Like and 33 master number, like all of this, they're all symbols for representing being able to bring the highest vibrational emotions to the lowest vibrational emotions and becoming a whole balanced being, which does require loving yourself. It requires bringing that love and acceptance from the heart space as the center of the unity, the unity center, to unite spirit and matter together to bring higher intuitional understanding into your lower material animalistic existence and into this material plane, this material world. So like for me in my own life, I experienced a time recently where I had to go through some deep emotional healing about some shame that I've internalized for a long time. And when I went through that experience, I had to bring love and acceptance into this lower part of myself. And when I did so, it really did bring about healing in a way that I felt like I needed. But it's not like I felt like I was perfect after that. It's not like I felt like, I'm like forgiven or like cleansed or anything. Like I still experienced shame after that. This is not just a one and done process. This is a lifelong journey, And so like the goal then at that point becomes to commit to the journey every single day, to begin the practice of daily, whatever it is, daily spiritual work in order to begin to integrate these aspects of yourself, the higher and lower aspects of yourself, which really I think is what all of the different correspondences of, whether it's the Kabbalistic tree of life or the chakra system, or even like another path that I've been experiencing recently is like the Norse system and like the tree of life in that system through a perspective that I read in a book through an author of like energy centers corresponding to the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil. And all these things to me, I think, really just come to represent different divisions of consciousness in the universe and different aspects of the self, which are both the same thing, because as above, so below, as within, so without. Microcosm that within you as a microcosm is a miniature version of the entire universe, and within the universe as a macrocosm is a blown out, expanded version of the experience of the self. And not just the self as you, but the self as all, the self as one, the self as God, the collective consciousness of all things, source consciousness. And so, the different divisions of the levels of the self include the physical. It's kind of the rage nowadays to say everything in the physical world is not real. And I catch myself saying that sometimes. That's not true. Everything in the physical is an illusion. And what that means by definition is that its true existence is not how it appears. But that does not mean that it does not exist. Those are very important distinctions. An illusion is not something that does not exist. An illusion is something which simply has a different nature than its appearance. And so it's a complete different understanding. And so the physical world is real, but it is illusory in nature, which means its true nature is not how it appears. And that you begin to use different maps of reality, like Kabbala, like the chakra system, like, the tarot trumps, which is where we get back into Golden Dawn, in a lot of ways, and kind of integrating to different maps of reality together to create a syncretic perennial system, which recognizes the holistic truth of all of these different perspectives saying the same thing, which is where the Golden Dawn really kind of has specialized in creating this syncretic magical system, which we still use to this day. Many magical practitioners from many different perspectives still use to this day, of integrating, whether it's like Christian symbolism, Jewish symbolism, Greek symbolism, Roman symbolism, Egyptian symbolism, Gnostic symbolism, and all of these different angles of reality together. I mean, Hindu, like Sanskrit, even like Eastern, like Buddhist systems together, and bringing together all these different maps of reality and integrating it together into one map, or at least a multifaceted, multidimensional expression of a core truth through many different maps. It's like a great bridge made of many bridges. I visualize it as this kind of great rainbow bridge collectively made up of a bunch of different bridges that has just been mashed together into one giant bridge. And that's kind of like the current of energy, not that the Golden Dawn created, but that the Golden Dawn tapped into and magnified, and through which many different practitioners to this day, whether it's Wiccan, pagan, neo-pagan, or whether you're part of an official order, and whether that order is more traditionally fraternal, like it's a Masonic order or Rosicrucian order, or whether that order is more strictly occult, like it's a Thelemic order or something like that. Like many of these different expressions use the same pentagram rituals and hexagram rituals that were developed in many parts by the Golden Dawn, and which probably were not created by them, but which were definitely brought to us in their current present form by them, and which we only know in the current present form because of them. We wouldn't know about this stuff truly if it wasn't, not just if it wasn't for the Golden Dawn, because actually the Golden Dawn didn't want to teach this stuff to anybody either. They were a secret society. They were a secret order. They kept this stuff to themselves. It was actually one man, Israel Regardie. And Israel Regardie is the only reason why we even are having this conversation right now. So many eternal orders of gratitude to that man for the work that he did in breaking the rules of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in order to bring those rituals forth to the rest of us, because there was a concerted effort even by those guys to hide this stuff from the majority of humanity, which is no longer, to me, philosophically, spiritually, or even morally valid, in my opinion.
And I couldn't agree more in that we owe Israel Regardie many thanks for publishing these texts when he did, just given the fact that, the Golden Dawn was established in 1888 during the late Victorian era, when Protestant Christianity was still like the predominant religion on the earth. So a lot of the views that these fraternities held were highly heretical and could have completely destroyed their public reputation. And just to speak or reference the analogy that you had made about the great bridge made of many smaller bridges, I know when I first started to walk the spiritual path, obviously everybody's heard of the chakra system, so that was kind of the first thing that I started to work with, really. And I soon discovered in that path how to achieve deep meditative trances and states of no mind, or mindfulness, as it's more well known. After walking that path for a short amount of time and then discovering, the Golden Dawn, I was able to kind of fuse what I had learned already as far as going into trance and producing these meditative mindsets with the visualization practices that are taught to the initiates through the Golden Dawn system. And I can say that one of the reasons that the Golden Dawn specifically resonates so powerful with me, or is such a high keynote, is just because it uses a lot of Judeo-Christian iconography. And as somebody who was raised Christian, it's a lot easier for my subconscious mind to digest that information without having intense bouts of fear or doubt or worry. So it's really beautiful to me that there's this entire Western esoteric tradition that is not very well known amongst people that is able to tap into this more Eastern-like stream of practicing expanded consciousness while using the traditional Christian symbolism to create a working system of spiritual practices that can not only expand consciousness, but can also be utilized in order to tap into a rich mosaic of correspondences. And just to circle back and kind of touch on what we had been speaking about earlier, as far as the concept of us having to integrate the lower self into the higher self by acknowledging our suffering and our traumas. One thing that I have been really grateful for in my walk and finding people in my life to teach me these different practices, such as, again, the Wim Hof style breathing specifically, or pranayama, if you want to use a different term for it, more spiritual sounding term, is when I go into these breathwork sessions, and I am at the peak of the experience, as in I've done the inhale, exhale, holding my breath, and my body has a surge of adrenaline. That's the whole point of the practice, is you basically you inhale, exhale, basically hyperventilate, and then get to a point where you start to feel a little lightheaded. You hold your breath in, and then you push. It's kind of hard to describe, but you push or you expand the muscles in your neck as though you're trying to push the blood from your vagus nerve up into your brain. But in that moment, when the adrenaline is released and you're at the height of that experience, it's terrifying. It is utterly terrifying for a moment, because you get this dreadful sensation that something's terribly wrong, that you're going to die. And then if you go deep enough into it, you can physically feel the traumas in your body. For me specifically, there's a weight in my stomach that comes out, and I can feel that weight, and then a memory or an image comes rushing into my mind that corresponds with that weight. So as you go through these practices, there are literal physical manifestations of energy in your body that have just been deposited over the years that you can break loose, and that you can work with. Or we have an entire etheric part of our being. It is an extension of our physical body that exists purely in the spiritual, that compounds these traumas. And if you had a tumor growing off of your ear or your arm or something, or you had some kind of strange growth somewhere, obviously you would want to take care of that or find out what the root cause of it is. But if you don't even realize that you have it, and it's just causing you this suffering over time, that's unfortunately the experience of most people, myself included to this day. Obviously I'm not professing to be some enlightened being, by no means. Just as Dakota states, I am the eternal student. But I will say that through these practices, I have discovered that, again, we all have a light body attached to us. And that body needs to be tended to. It needs to be nourished with love, with self-love. And going through these practices, you can start to awaken that body and grow those appendages on that body. There's a whole nother part of your being out there. More often than not, it is filled with junk and just crap, and it is our duty. It should be our goal to try to clean it up, just as we would take care of our normal body by eating healthy and exercising. We also need to take care of our etheric body by practicing acts of goodwill towards others, performing actions that we know resonate with our hearts, in a sense, that provide wellness for the good of all, that provide an experience that we know in the deepest recesses of our mind is bringing about a positive change for all of humanity. You may not receive as much of a payout for doing the right thing, but at the end of the day, you are nourishing your light body. The concept of selling your soul to the devil, or selling your soul to gain wealth, riches, whatever, physical manifestation, it's a very real concept, not so much in the sense that, here, I'm going to create a contract and boom, you sold your soul to the devil. It's more so, Are you going to perform the action that is going to build your body, that is going to build your energetic resonance toward a positive outcome in the end? Or are you going to perform the action that will continue to regress your body into matter? It's all about remaining balanced. It's all about remaining balanced. Just as Dakota mentioned, we are trying to bridge the light with the dark. We need to acknowledge the dark, understand and love the dark, and strive to become the light. We cannot ignore the dark, or the darkness will consume us from within. It will come back to bite you. So, and these are concepts that we all are aware of, and as somebody who is raised Christian, one parable comes to mind, and that is that, the law of God is written on every man's heart. And I'm not saying, again, for those of you who are Bible averse or whatever, you don't have to take it literally. What I mean when I say that is simply that all of us know deep down inside what the right thing to do is. All of us know deep down inside what we want to do with our lives. It's just a matter of going inward enough to be able to draw that out of yourself. If you're at a job that you absolutely hate and despise, your body is going to be, your energetic body is going to be screaming at you and causing these deposits of trauma over time.
Yeah, and to that end, the thing that I would add to that would be that being able to accept your whole self, being able to love your whole self, doesn't just mean embodying your lowest traits all the time, or thinking that you can't change. It means accepting yourself wherever you're at, but understanding that every moment you're a new you, and that in the present moment you have the ability at any given time to continue to make a new choice of who you want to be and tune into a new reality, observe a new timeline, whatever you want to say, to become a new version of yourself, which is closer, refined to the true self, because I do believe what Adam said about that we all do know inside, in our hearts, in our true soul, what it is that we really want to do, and we know what the right thing is. But I honestly do think the difficult part is that so many of us get, how would you say it, like fogged lenses, where they don't really have the ability to see inwards, and to really see the clear light manifestation from their soul, because it's just blocked by all that trauma, all the preconceived notions, limiting beliefs, false constructs of reality, which you were taught growing up, ingrained in you by institutions and by traumatic experiences with things that you didn't understand because you were young, and all this, the layers of physical attachment, which keep us karmically kind of stuck in the cycle of the rat race, if you will, and keep us creating more of the same unlucky circumstances for ourselves because we believe that that's the life that we're living. And to that end, that is why the knowledge of how to actually cleanse those lenses, how to actually begin to see inwards into that clear light and delve directly into it and begin to pull it out of you into physical manifestation, why the spiritual psychic technologies of those processes have been hidden and restricted for so long, because the more that people can be emotionally kept in the same behavioral loops that cause them suffering, is the more that the process of the world begins to maintain its status, and those who can use this knowledge to their benefit continue to do that without the rest of us being able to do that. And so this is kind of my declaration of war, if you will, to those higher, supposedly powers that be, that think that they're playing any kind of control, because truly we're all one together. Anything that they can do, we can do. And there's more of us. There's more people in the world than there are people that know about magic. That just is what it is. And unfortunately, we're not going to necessarily access ascension of humanity by preaching on the street corner like the preachers do. It's going to have to be through living an example of a life that truly benefits and magnifies outwards in an exuberant fashion. And whether that is through the abundance of wealth or the abundance of love or the abundance of growth of experiences of suffering, because for a lot of people their paths will probably take them through many difficult places just as much as it will take them through many great places. But I do legitimately believe inside that you deserve to live the life that you want to live, and that life, if you are willing to do anything for it, is already there for you. There's every timeline exists, which means there's a timeline where you're already living in that life. It's just about tapping into it and figuring out how to fulfill that manifestation in time and space here, right now. But understanding that the spiritual technologies to be able to work with yourself and your circumstances, and to begin to dig deep into your traumas and your past and your soul and who you are, and also to dig deep into the fabric of what reality is, and to explore it, and to live life in a way that allows you to be in accordance with the universe and to have a conversation with it. That life is a fulfilling, beautiful, amazing, happy life, while also still being full of struggle and difficulty, I'm sure. But it's also probably one of the best experiences that you could ever have, and is wholeheartedly the adventure of a lifetime if you're willing to delve down it. The things that I've experienced on this path, even in just the past few years of exploring it, have had me have experiences, mostly completely sober, that have been some of the most amazing experiences of my entire life. And I ask anybody who's even remotely interested in this stuff to begin to research it themselves. I cannot stress enough the fact that I know that I'm not going to win the world over by preaching on the street corner, but I can teach people what it means to be able to generate that life that you want to live, by generating that life for myself and living it as an example. And I have been doing that, and my channel is my attempt to do that, and is my manifestation of doing that right now in the present moment, or is at least just one of the faces of it. I know that so long as I hold true to this, and I maintain awareness and faith on the vision of a world healed, of a conscious humanity, that if I don't see it before I die, that wherever I'll end up next will be wherever I'm supposed to end up. And if things go the way that I plan on them in my life, I'm working on testing the theory of rainbow body ascension. I want to see if I can attain that in this life with the spiritual knowledge that I've come across at this point, whatever that means. So far in magic, every time that I've attempted to prove myself wrong in something, and say, I don't really believe this, but I'm going to try it anyway, something has happened which has opened my mind to there being a greater outstanding manifestation of reality around me than what I could have ever possibly imagined. And so, if this is the path, if there really is a path here, where's the end goal? What does it look like, and what is that experience? Is ascension really a thing? Can an individual attain that? What does that mean for the collective of humanity? And how do we all reach that together? How do we collectively ascend and raise our consciousness, to a greater level? If I die in the pursuit of this work, then I know that it's what's meant to happen. But I doubt that. And what I know that will happen instead is a beautiful, amazing life journey, full of wonders beyond my wildest dreams at this moment. And that's kind of the point, because I'm tapping into the unknown. and the unknown is supposed to be that which is beyond my perception. So, delve into the darkness, right?
Yes, and you know what, guys? It's tough out there right now, with the economy and with the general trajectory that our culture is going towards, just collective nihilism. A lot of this stuff might come off as unrealistic, but one simple point that I'm going to leave everybody with is this. And again, this does trace back to the Bible, and it's just something that I'm familiar with, but you can find etchings of this concept in every religious, philosophical, theological society you decide to delve into. But that is basically just, you need to be the salt of the earth, by raising your vibration and understanding these concepts. And it doesn't even have to be through esoteric means. You could be somebody who is raising their etheric body by living their true will in a life that has absolutely nothing to do with these occulted concepts. It's all about just bringing the light down into this realm, disseminating the rays of divinity, and trying your hardest to be a positive, good person and influence to those around you. If you can be a positive influence, then it will spread like a web. And that is the goal. That is the truth. That is the light. That is what we need to do. That is what we are here to do. And it is inevitable. It is inevitable because there is only one thing. There is only one thing. And that thing will return to itself eventually. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a hard road ahead. Things are getting pretty dense out here, but it is inevitable that all things will eventually return to the one source. And in the meantime, do your best to try and just be the light. Is there anything else you want to add before we end the podcast?
And enjoy it. Do your best to enjoy it. The human experience is a miracle in and of itself. And your emotional territory is your sovereign territory. Plant your flag. Allow yourself to enjoy the essence of everything you experience to the deepest magnitude. And allow yourself to take a perspective of reality which allows yourself to see this all with gratitude, with courage, with the ability to laugh at it and maintain lightheartedness. Because this is all a game. This is all a gift. This is all here for us. Every moment is a blessing. And you create the ability to feel the way that you desire to feel, which gives you the means to surf the waves of your own emotions, of your own waters, and delve into the depths and dive down and retrieve that which is holy in the water and bring it up to the surface, truly. It's easy for hard times to let people close their hearts and to let people look at reality like it's negative, like it's a scary thing. But I truly believe that right now is a unique opportunity for the consciousness of not only humanity and this planet, but the consciousness of the universe to enlighten itself and to awaken itself here right now on this planet. It's too much to go into in a short period of time, but it will be the focus of a lot of the work on my channel as well. So I'm happy to be here, incarnated with you guys in this journey at this time. This Earth game is crazy, but it's pretty amazing when you let yourself have fun.
Just be who you are. Be who you are. Live your life to the fullest of your capabilities, but forgive yourself and love yourself. Our time here is very short, and there's so much beauty to be explored. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and end the show now. Go ahead and check out the description and the video link if you want to check out Dakota's SoundCloud account. There will also be links directly to his YouTube channel if you guys are interested in delving a little bit deeper into these topics. Just stick around because I know that we both are planning to release more content soon. Thank you for joining us.